Okay, so today you'll have to excuse the fact that my voice is a little weak because I'm coming off of a cold of some sort with a cough associated with it. I apologize for that, but I could not delay this episode any for you because it's going to start one of the most important messages and important teachings that you will ever receive regarding improving the quality of your life and the quality of your business practices. Stand by.
Welcome to the Turbocharged Entrepreneur, where we discover the secrets of mastering the mind game of success. Clear your mind's calendar. You're about to be infused with some high-octane wisdom that is going to help you turbocharge your positivity, your creativity, your productivity, and your profitability. Here now is your host, a former executive with the Fortune Global 100, a successful entrepreneur out of Georgia Tech's Advanced Technologies Development Center, an advisor in the Charlotte startup community, an expert in emotions management, Sean Webb.
Hey, welcome to the Turbocharged Entrepreneur. I am your host, Sean Webb. Thank you for spending your time with me today. I will make sure that we don't waste even 1 second of it. Okay, so today we're going to start the series on how emotions work within your mind and how specifically they come about in your mind, depending on your attachments and your processes, so that you can understand them better. Because what happens when we understand our emotions better is that we're able to take control of them more easier and get them out of the way of the important decisions that we may have to make regarding our business practices. Now, this is brand new stuff. You're not going to find this anywhere else on the internet or in any book that you open regarding emotions or emotion science. That said, this is brand new stuff that has been reviewed at the highest levels. I sent this stuff to the PhDs at MIT and Georgia Tech, and one of the world's leading specialists in this field actually said this is the best cognitive model of emotions catalyst I've ever seen. So what I'm going to share with you today is a model that I've developed in the last 10 years after a lot of introspection about what makes me tick, and then a little bit of tweaking about what makes everyone tick. And so what we're going to start with today is explaining a little bit about the model and how it differentiates itself from the brain and how it creates our automated responses of emotions, but how it creates those automated responses from things that we can manipulate, things that we can move around so that that automated process works in our favor rather than to our detriment. So first, let's talk about the difference between the brain and the mind. The brain is that 3-pound mass of gray matter and neuroglia that creates the mechanism, the organ that resides within our heads. The mind is something else entirely. Now, I like Dr. Francis Crick's definition of mind, which is the mind is the experience that we have because of the brain being there. Now, recent studies and recent science has shown that our mind, our willful intention, our movie screen of the brain can work as a two-way communication channel. We, of course, see things that the brain is doing, but we can also influence how the brain changes itself, called plasticity. Because while it's true that we experience the things that go on in our brain, and by a large degree we are a child of our genetics, at the same time we can do mindful manipulation that does change the physical gray matter within our brains. And that is critical when it comes to governing our emotional life, because at the point that we start taking control of our emotional well-being and taking control of our emotional processes, all of a sudden our brain starts to change how it processes our emotions and how much our emotions affect us. And that's critical, because wouldn't we all like to be Jedi Masters? Yes. Yes, we would. Would we all like to be Zen Kung Fu monks who could take out any challenge that opposes us? Yes, we would. So today we're going to take the first step in becoming that type of entity, that type of even-keeled, can't throw me off my balance, can't throw me off my game type of business person. Okay, so how emotions work, and we'll figure out that neurological science and psychological emotions science supports this, is based on a simple equation. And that equation is expectation and or preference, EP, as compared to reality as perceived, RP, or otherwise called perception, equals an emotional reaction. And it works this simply. You have an expectation or preference in your mind regarding things associated with yourself. Sometimes spiritual folks call this ego, psychology calls it sense of self, but we have a sense of self about us. And our brain is an organ that helps us basically live a little longer in life, right? It is designed to help us define the world and then define us so that we can understand that, okay, that's a grizzly bear, and we need to be able to run X amount of speed to be able to get away from the grizzly bear. And if we get too close to the grizzly bear, that's not good for our continued survival, right? And so this brain is this organ that soaks up all this information and all this energy about the world and about us. And at the point that things don't jive in that whole computational arena, all of a sudden emotions kick us into, fight or flight, kick us into anger, kick us into sadness, kick us into happiness, kick us into fear responses, that type of thing, so as to improve and prolong our human existence. And so from a 50,000 foot view, it looks like this. We have an expectation or preference regarding our sense of self, and we compare that to our reality as perceived, our perception, and usually this is processed by the limbic system, and then that kicks out an emotional response. If these two are similar, like you have an expectation or preference that your favorite sports team wins the championship, and all of a sudden your favorite sports team does win the championship, then we have a positive emotion as a result. So if these things are equal, then we have a positive emotion. If they're not equal, that's when we have problems with our emotional existence. If we have an expectation or preference that our favorite sports team wins the championship and they don't, that's when negative emotions kick in and we feel the disappointment or utter despair regarding going all the way to the championship and not quite making it. The way this kicks up in our business life, we have an expectation or preference to meet quota, or we have an expectation or preference that our product does really well, or that everything goes really well in our process of creating things. And all of a sudden, they do or they don't go well. Well, that will create the positive or negative emotions as dictated by our automated processing within our brain, as determined by these malleable things here. We can change our expectation or preference about things, and we can change our perception about things. And all of those things can affect our emotions. Now, here's how that works. Our sense of self basically comes down to a number of attachments within the mind. And so it all comes back to us. It all comes back to me. It all comes back to the thing that I perceive as myself and the things that we put on as attachments regarding our daily life. Now, of course, we see our body as our number one attachment of sense of self. And so at any time that our body falls into threat or someone attacks our body or, something, we lose a portion of our body, that can dictate a high level of fear, a high level of anger, a high level of sadness. But from there, we put on additional attachments. We put on our politics, we put on our religion, we put on our ideas about this or that, and we put on a great deal of attachments regarding our job, our career, and our business life. And all of those attachments feed into this expectation or preference regarding those attachments. If we put on an attachment regarding our project that we're working on for our business, we have an expectation or preference that that project does really well. And if it doesn't, then that creates the negative emotion. Now, there are specific definitions for each emotion. This isn't the end-all, be-all of explaining all emotions in this one little equation. I mean, how could this one little equation explain all the 80 various different emotions that psychology has identified in the emotion sciences? But when identifying and dealing with our negative emotions in life, it can come down to as easy a process as what was our expectation and or preference regarding that situation, and what was my perception of that preference? Because if you're having a negative emotion, one of these two didn't match the other. And so what we need to do is sit back and say, okay, what's the thing that I'm attached to? And what's the thing that I saw that didn't meet that expectation or preference? Now, we'll move into the specific definitions of emotions in the future episodes. For instance, fear, and we'll even talk about how neuroscience supports this, that you have an expectation and or preference regarding your sense of self, and there may be a potential pending devaluation to that attachment coming, like a bear is coming towards you, and there may be a potential devaluation of self at that point, or you're about to step on stage in front of 2,000 folks and give a speech, and there may be a potential devaluation of self there if you screw things up, or you're standing on the top of a very tall ladder and you may fall, which may be a potential devaluation of self. Fear has a very specific definition. Well, so does anger, so does sadness, and then there are various variations of severity within those emotion groups. Fear at a very low level is mild concern. Fear at a very high level is panic. Okay, and so you've got a number of emotions that fit within one set of rules that governs the emotion as dictated by the equation of emotion. So we'll learn a little bit more about that in the next couple of episodes. But for this episode, if you want to understand the things that drive you crazy and the things that create negative emotions within you, it comes down to this simple little equation. It is the equation of emotion. Expectation and or preference as compared to your perception, your reality as perceived, equals an emotional response. And so if you want to understand why you feel angry, why you feel sad, why you feel happy, why you feel afraid of something, then sit down and analyze what is it that I'm attached to and what is it that I am perceiving that's not meeting that expectation or preference regarding that attachment. And at that point, Psychology 101 tells us once we can name the emotion, once we can witness the emotion, we step back and we're not as affected by that emotion, especially in the immediate term and moving forward. Because when you start to get this whole process, and here's the big diagram that we will explain all of moving forward. When you start to understand this process that creates all of your emotions within your mind, all of a sudden you become less affected by them. And as you see the mechanisms that create your emotions as they're creating them in real time, that's when you transform into the Jedi Knight. That's when you transform into that Kung Fu Zen monk that is affected by nothing, and you can focus on getting your goals accomplished. Because that's what we're all about, right? We're all about increasing our creativity, our positivity, our productivity, and ultimately our profitability. And so we'll leave it there for next week. Your homework is to focus on this, your equation of emotion, because every emotion that you ever have or ever have had will be dictated by this equation of emotion. Your expectation and or preference as compared to your reality as perceived, your perception, equals an emotional response. If these two things are balanced, you have a happy emotion. If these two things are not balanced, you have a negative emotion. If one of these things don't exist, by the way, like if you don't have an expectation or preference about a specific sports team winning the championship and they do, you don't give a shit. And if you don't, if you have an expectation or preference about a sports team winning a championship and all of a sudden you don't know who won, you don't know. You don't have an emotional response. Yeah, it could be driving you nuts that you don't have the score of the game. Like I still don't know who won the Masters yesterday. The expectation and or preference regarding a player doing well in the Masters, I still don't know. It's driving me nuts that I don't know, and I'm about to go look it up. But the reality is, that's a different equation of emotion. My expectation or preference is to know the score. I don't know the score. That's the imbalance. And that's what's driving me nuts. Okay, so this thing governs your emotions. And we will take a deeper look into the rest of the model in the upcoming episodes so that you can understand exactly what makes you fearful, exactly what makes you angry, exactly what makes you sad, exactly what makes you worrisome, exactly what makes you regretful about things. And at that point, you'll be able to take control of your emotional life, and it will make you more effective, better person in life and in business. Hope things are well for you guys today. I love you. Don't forget, if you'd love to drop us a review on iTunes, that would be awesome. It helps people find us. If you'd like to share this, please do, because this is the only spot that you're going to be able to get the understanding of emotions to be able to make yourself a master in life and a master in business. And that's no joke. Love you guys. Talk to you soon. Peace.